Welcome back to Finding Joy in the Hard, where you'll get to hear powerful stories from people who've gone through incredible challenges and have come out the other side. I'm your host, Suzanne Andorra Barron. I'm a mom, a wife, a yoga instructor, a meditation coach, and a certified Jinshin Jitsu practitioner. I started this podcast, Finding Joy in the Hard, because I wanted to remind you you are so much stronger than you think you are, and that light can be found in the dark and joy in the hard. I know what it's like when life feels too hard. My oldest child, Christopher, had leukemia 3 times and passed at the age of 9. But those are facts. They don't define our life. We had fun, joy, and laughter amidst hard times, and we continue to do so. I hope you see yourself in my guests and in me. Maybe not in our actual experiences, but in your ability to dig deep and find strength. Every episode will include a healing tip. My guest today, Sheri Roddy, is a friend, a medical mom, and so much more. Steeped in her faith, compassionate with a spark of humor, Sheri went from newlywed to grateful mother to unexpected medical mom, and now a first-time author. She finds joy in her family, friends, gardening, and community service. Known as the ringmaster of her family circus, Sheri is always up to hosting family get-togethers or a game night for a few laughs. You can often find her relaxing and recharging at her Cape Escape, enjoying sunsets with her husband Joe and dog Edgar. Sheri shares her family's arduous journey through kidney disease. Her son Christopher was born with kidney disease and he's battled it his entire life. She shares all that needed to be done to support him, including a transplant. But she also shares how her family found that joy through family dinners and game nights, and how they found the light in the dark by relying on family. Maybe you have a child that is fighting kidney disease, or maybe you have that yourself, or you know someone who's going through it, or maybe you'll learn. You can pick up some of the beautiful ways that Sheri and her family do life. I'm listening to this on Apple, Spotify, or Amazon Music. Know that it's also available on YouTube at Finding Joy in the Hard Podcast SAB for my name. I'll leave a link in the show notes and enjoy. I am so excited to introduce you to my friend, Sheri Roddy. Welcome, Sheri. Welcome to Finding Joy in the Hard.
Thank you so much for having me, Suzanne.
So I'm trying to think, I think since our kids went to different schools, our kids are the same ages, but they went to different schools. I think maybe we met one another probably at the Glen Rock pool, right?
We did, but I believe they went to preschool together. I know that Christopher's preschool at the co-op was a little,
Oh, so
right?
yes. I started my boys out at Academy of Our Lady, the Catholic pre-K. And
Okay.
then Ryan, so Christopher went there the whole time, but Ryan's second year, I switched him to the co-op. That's right.
That's
So
where we
then they
met
were
then.
together.
That's
Yeah,
where we met. That's where we met. So
that.
yes, it's over 20 years. But it's funny, I knew you, I knew of you, I knew that you had been going, you had big struggles with your Christopher. I was having my own struggles with my own Christopher, but I remember it was a hot day and I want to say it was like 2005 or 2006. And I know that you'll probably remember the year, but I was with my kids at the pool and I had just gotten them out and started them with their snacks. So now I could kind of focus on what was around me. And I hear this belly laughter, like, and and when you hear it, I'm like, what is going on? I got to get in on this. And I turned around fully expecting to see a whole bunch of kids, and it was not. It was you and your boys. That was it. You guys were in the moment, just loving life, grabbing it. And I thought, oh my God, through everything that she's going through, look at this. And you know what, Suzanne? I just have to share with you today. You had what I wanted. And you were so inspirational to me that day. I thought, Sheri, lighten up, lighten up. You got to stop taking. Yes, we were dealing with serious things, but in those little moments that you have the ability to just be happy with your kids and just do regular kid stuff, just do it.
Yeah.
So thank you for giving me that.
Oh,
That really
you're
was.
welcome.
It
And
was a
thank you
moment
so
for
much
me.
for sharing that. Like,
Of course.
that's what kept me sane. So it was
Mm,
those little moments that kept me sane, because if I could just have fun with them, I felt like that was medicine, right? That was a form of medicine. And I don't, I wasn't, I don't even think I was practicing yoga back then, but, I wasn't into all the learning. Now I know how much like laughter is a medicine and all of that. It wasn't that.
mhm,
It just knew if
mhm.
I could have fun with my boys, we could handle anything.
Yes, absolutely. And look, when you're going through a dark time, it's really easy to stay on that dark side of the street. I know
Yes.
that sounds, but it is, especially when it's your kid, right?
When it's your kid, and I have to say, like, for the most part during Christopher's treatment, he was doing well most of the time. So it
Yes.
was easier to be more positive.
Mhm,
What
mhm.
really stretched me, and I do want to talk about you, we'll get
No,
there.
it's okay, it's okay.
But what really stretched me was when he wasn't doing well and I had to change the script. So after he was diagnosed with his third cancer, and we were living in New York City at the hospital, and I was walking to church, and they just started his third round of treatment. The first two didn't work. And I was short and I was unfocused and I couldn't pay
Yeah,
attention to what anybody said. And I was
yes.
snappy with my boys and with my husband. And walking down Second Avenue, I thought, okay, I have a choice. For the
Mm,
next 2 weeks, we won't know anything. So I can choose to believe it's healing him, or I can stay in this awful place.
yeah,
And I just made the decision. Okay, it's working.
yeah.
And we know that it didn't work, but thank God I gave myself that gift.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's hard to find that though, so I admire that. I admire that in you because worry turns to darkness really quick, and it is very hard to smile some days, but yeah, I kudos to you because it's tough to do
And
that.
sometimes we can't smile, and we have to be okay with that, right?
Of course.
Because I
Yes.
think if we force it, then we feel equally worse.
Yes.
Because then we're
Yes.
so we're so heavy. Like life is so much harder because we're trying so hard to be something we're not.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
So, can you share a little bit about yourself before we go into it?
Yeah. Yep,
You
yep,
know,
yep. So I am a stay-at-home mom. I had the privilege of adopting our daughter Juliana from South Korea, and shortly after she came home, I learned I was pregnant, gave birth. Yeah, surprise. Must have been the Korean water.
okay.
So February of 99, Juliana came home. We traveled to South Korea, picked her up, brought her home. And by June of that year, I learned I was pregnant. So at 20 weeks, I had my first ultrasound, and they mentioned that there was excessive fluid in the baby's kidneys, and they wanted me to repeat that a few weeks later. So I did at 28 weeks, repeated the ultrasound, and they said there was still quite a bit of fluid. So I brought it up to my pediatrician. Juliana had gone in for a cold or something, and I said, "Hey, by the way," and he said, "Oh, no, 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 no. Don't worry about it. That happens a lot. Sometimes it'll dissipate, once the baby's born. But you know what? Just to err on the side of caution, we're going to do an ultrasound when the baby's born." And I thought, okay. And he was honestly so matter of fact about it that it really put my mind at ease. And I did not allow it to consume me for the duration of my pregnancy. So in January of 2000, Christopher was born full term. And we thought everything was great. And he's in my arms, and we're counting fingers and toes and oohing and eyeing and talking about the logistics of going home. And a nurse came in and quickly reminded me, "Oh, we need to take him down for this ultrasound." And I thought, "Oh, yeah, 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 that's right." He came back within a half an hour, 45 minutes. And again, we resume. And about an hour later, that same nurse came back and said, "We need to take him down for more testing." And I was like, okay. So I just kind of thought, well, maybe it was a bad read on the ultrasound. You try to put a different spin on it. So it was like 2 hours, and Joe and I are just sitting there pacing the floor, thinking, what is going on? Where is he? Where's our baby? And out of the corner of my eye, I heard someone coming in the room, and I looked, and it was our pediatrician with the head of the neonatal intensive care unit. They said that Chris had been admitted into the neonatal intensive care unit. He had something called, I laugh now, he had a high creatinine level. And I thought, what in God's name is creatinine? I can't even pronounce this thing. It's not like I could pick up my phone. We were in 2000. I couldn't pick up my phone and Google that. We didn't have that. So here I am, like, just listening to them thinking, please tell me what this is. What does this mean? And they explained that it was a chemical waste product that is filtered through the blood, through the kidneys. And a high creatinine level can be indicative of kidney damage of some form. So we were just shocked. Like, what does this mean? A normal creatinine level, just to kind of give you some guidelines here, a normal creatinine level is around 0.8 when a baby is born, and it hovers around 1 through your life. When Chris was born, it was 3.8. So his kidneys were really struggling. So they explained to us that he had something called hydronephrosis. And what that is when the urine gets trapped in the kidneys and drains slower than it should, it causes the kidneys to swell. So essentially, it's a urine flow issue. So hydronephrosis is given a grade level, 1 being mild on up to 5. And Chris was immediately, without question, a 5. I think if they could have given him a 6, they could have given him a 6. This particular condition affects 1 in about 100 babies. So it's pretty common-ish. But they explained to us that the majority of the babies will outgrow this by the time they're 9 months. Only a third of the babies will ever need surgery. And out of those babies, it was like a 95 or better success rate, that it was going to be a one and done surgery and he'd be fine. So, of course, they're sharing these statistics with you, and you're like, okay, this is great. Let's fix him. Just fix him. At one point, I remember one of the doctors, or I think it was maybe even a nurse, said, Mrs. Roddy, this is plumbing, and plumbing can be fixed. And I thought, okay, yes, I like that. I like that little analogy. He was in the hospital for about a week and a little. Leaving the hospital without your baby it's
The
just
worst, right?
the worst thing, the worst. So, we're learning all this through doctors and nurses. Like, Google wasn't a thing. All I'm thinking all along is like, please just fix him. So Christopher remained there again for the week, and we went back and forth. And of course, I have a toddler in tow at the same time. A few weeks into that, they said he was going to definitely require surgery. So at 6 weeks, he went in for his first surgery. So that was supposed to be a one and done surgery, and it wasn't. That surgery did not work at all. So it was a whole year of more testing and more issues with him, and all this antibiotic that they were giving him. And I'm not a huge medicine person. I will give him medicine when we need, but I was like, oh God, what is this doing to him, right?
Yes,
So,
you worry about the long-term side effects. What's this going to
oh
mean
my
for his
gosh,
future, right?
of course, yes. So it was a year later, almost to the day, Christopher had another surgery at 14 months old. And that one, again, these are not laparoscopic surgeries. He is open from hip to hip. They call them a smiley incision, but it's like a magic act. They're cutting your child in half.
Oh my
So you
goodness.
can only imagine the recovery for that is hard. I mean, when he was 6 weeks old, he was in almost like an incubator type of thing, and we can kind of hold him. But here he was 14 months old. I mean, this kid was running at this point, and he's got to lay still. So of course there was morphine involved and all kinds of stuff. That was a really rough one. So after that, it was a few years of just testing and monitoring him to see what's happening. And it was always the grade 5, always grade 5, but it's not getting any worse, but let's just watch it. And so during that time, when he was 2 till he was like 5, now we're dealing with regular kid stuff that I can talk to other parents about, like tubes and adenoids removed and tonsils removed and like all that junk that some kids go through, but of course Christopher went through.
Oh, so
Right?
he had that too.
Oh yes. Oh
Oh,
yes. He had all
okay.
that stuff in addition. So in the summer of 2006, we were up in Cape Cod vacationing with some friends of ours, and their kids are similar ages to Juliana and Christopher. And at one point, we're on the beach and the kids are making sandcastles. And my girlfriend turned around and she said, oh, look at his cute little Buddha belly. And I was like, oh, Yeah. And we got back to the house, to the cottage, and I'm showering him in the outdoor shower, and I'm looking, and I'm like, it wasn't sitting right because I thought, this kid at his age and with his level of activity should not have a Buddha belly looking like this anymore. So we got home, and it was like a week later, he had an appointment with his urologist. And we did have frequent follow ups with him, but it seemed like maybe I missed one in between. So I think it was 4 months from the last one until this one. And we had a follow up appointment with him. And he said he did a regular ultrasound. And he said, you know what? I want to do something called an antegrade study. It's an antegrade pyelogram study. This is a test in the hospital where they put little tubes in the kidneys and they go down and look to see if there's any obstructions, because I don't know why his stomach is so distended like this. So it was scheduled at Greenwich Hospital. We went up, Joe and myself. It was going to be a 45-minute procedure, and that afternoon we were going to go get him a Halloween costume and resume our life and figure out what was going on. So he went in for the test. It was supposed to be 45 minutes. 3 hours later, they came out and told us that he was completely blocked. And what was happening was there was so much reflux that his bladder had apparently stretched 7 times bigger than it should have been. The doctor immediately put him in for emergency surgery the very next day. And we thought, okay, third time's the charm, please let this be it. So that surgery, he was in the hospital, I think, for 10 days. And of course, surprise, I show up with nothing. I had his blanket with us, his little security blanket. That was it. Towards the end of our stay, we were getting ready to leave, and I just thought, something's different. Something's different. I couldn't put my finger on it, Susanna, but his recovery just seemed slower. We had been through this, right? Twice. And his recovery was just slower, and it was just off. And they said, no, it's fine. And he was putting out urine, but there was a lot of blood in there. And I thought, is that normal? No, it's from the surgery. Anyway, we went home, and I could tell he just wasn't right. And it was a few days in, and I spoke to the doctors, both pediatrician and his urologist. And they said, you know what, why don't you take him in? Maybe he's dehydrated. And I thought, okay, that sounds easy. Let's hook him up to IVs and get back home. So I took him in, and I had to carry him to the car because he was just so weak. It had gotten to that point. Like, I really knew he needed help. We got into the emergency room, and everyone else was like, oh, he's sleeping and tiptoeing around. And I was like, no, this is not just him sleeping. There's something happening. Like, I felt like he was slipping in and out of consciousness.
Mhm.
So we had been there a little over 2 hours, and doctors and nurses and all these people. And the doctor came in, and he had this very blank look on his face, holding his pad. And he looked at me and he said, Mrs. Roddy, I am sorry, but your son is in complete renal failure, and there's nothing we can do for him. And I thought, okay,
He's 5 at this time?
he had just turned 6. He had just
Okay.
turned 6. And I thought, you're going to let my 6-year-old die. Like, you have nothing else? Not really? The bottom fell out. I mean, everything just went black. And he explained that they did not offer pediatric dialysis there. So I said, you have to get in touch with his doctor. I don't care what his doctor's doing, where he is. And he did. He got in touch with him. The doctor was performing surgery up in Greenwich and was on speakerphone telling this doctor, you need to catheterize this kid because he feared that there was a clot somewhere blocking everything. He said, so you have to catheterize this kid and get rid of it. They could not do it. They tried everything. And what happened with Christopher over the years is he got so much scar tissue from those surgeries that it almost formed like a ledge in the base of his bladder. So whenever anybody tried to catheterize him, it was always very hard to do so.
Mm.
Well, this doctor essentially gave up and was like, we can't do it. We're trying, we can't do it. So Chris's urologist out of Greenwich called the trauma team from New York Presbyterian, and they came and picked me and Christopher up by ambulance and took him there. And they worked on him for about 4 hours. Joe had been working in the city that day, so he met us there. I don't think we ever locked eyes with one another because If we had, we would have been reduced to a puddle of tears, and it just wouldn't have been good. So we were in the PICU. They were working on him. One of us could stay by his head, and I passed that on to Joe. And I just sat in the corner and just sobbed, thought, oh my God, we're losing him. We are losing him. So thankfully, it was about 4 hours, and this doctor who looked a lot like Doogie Howser, I thought, do you even have a driver's license, buddy? But he saved Chris's life. He saved his life. He managed to get the catheter in, and then it was about 2 to 3 days of constant irrigation. And what they would do is they would put saline in and then draw it out, and then the clots would come out. And that went on for 3 days before they felt that they had gotten all the clots that had formed in the base of his bladder. And I don't know how, Suzanne, but by the grace of God, he did not need dialysis after that.
Wow, that's fabulous.
His kidneys took a very hard hit, but he did not need dialysis. So that was really great. So it was at that point we switched to a nephrologist. And again, we were in this monitoring phase. But again, grade 5 reflux, nothing was getting better. So now he's around 8 years old. Christopher got something called fever of unknown origin for an entire year. And that is exactly what it sounds like. They are fevers. You have absolutely no idea why they are occurring. At one point, he had a fever that bounced between 101 and 104 for an entire month. And after a year, it just went away. We still have absolutely no idea why that happened, but it did. By the time he was 10, the doctor was starting to get concerned again. He went for every 3-month checkups and tests and everything, but at 10, he really started to get concerned. That appointment when he was 10 years old, we had a very lengthy conversation with the doctor, and he said, look, he's got an awful lot of scar tissue, and I fear that I have hit a dead end. And I thought, what does that mean? We got to fix this kid. And he said, I have a couple of colleagues that I'm getting with next week. I'm bringing Chris's case to the table, and we'll discuss this. He wasn't exactly sure what the next move would be, but he wanted to run it by some colleagues. And I thought, we will go and do anything to fix this, but you tell us. About 2 weeks after that appointment, I set the kids off to school. I'm sitting home, just cleaning up the dishes, and my doorbell rang, and it was a friend from town. And she would come over from time to time for a cup of coffee after we dropped the kids off. So it wasn't anything out of the norm. She happened to be a nurse at the local hospital where Chris's doctor worked, and she worked with him in the OR sometimes. And she came in and had a very odd look on her face. And I said, hey, come on in. You want a cup of coffee? And she said, no, I can't stay, but I need to talk to you. Please sit down. She learned that morning Chris's doctor had been killed in a car accident. We relied on that man. I mean, talk about the cons of putting your eggs in one basket. We really did not know where we were going to go. It was sad enough that he was gone. I couldn't even fathom what we were going to do or who we would turn to for Chris's medical care. It was devastating. So, of course, that day, phone calls to my sisters, and Joe and I were on the phone like crazy that day. What are we going to do? Where do we go? And of course, I was calling my dad, and my dad wasn't picking up, kept going into voicemail. And of course, whenever anything goes wrong in your life, right? I don't care how old you are, you want your parent, right? So kids were still in school. I picked them up from school. We came home. I got them set up with their snack to do their homework. And it was about 10 or 15 minutes into that, and my phone rang. And it was my father's wife screaming into the phone. And I was like, whoa, 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 what? Back it up. What is happening? Slow down. Take a breath. What's happening? And it finally occurred to me that she kept saying over and over again, Sheri, he's gone. Your father is gone.
Oh my goodness.
So in the same day, we lost our beloved doctor and my father. My father had passed away peacefully that morning in his recliner chair, just had a heart attack at 69 years old and was gone. And that was it. So needless to say, it was a hell of a week. Absolute blur. Losing my father was just horrible. And of course, 14 years later, it still hurts. But losing the doctor was tragic and terrifying for Chris's future. I mean, Look, obviously no fault of the doctors, but we were left with no guidance, nothing. We relied on this man. Again, put our eggs in that basket. And, I think back and that was a colossal mistake on our part. But so,
But is it because you get attached to a doctor and you don't
yes,
think anything and you're not worrying like what will happen to this doctor? You're thinking, how can I heal my child?
yep,
And
exactly.
you're not looking, it's not like putting all your money in one bank and then that bank
No,
failing.
no,
It's not like that. It's like you're doing the
right.
best you can and you have a doctor and they're fabulous and they're
Yes.
fabulous. Why would you turn away from them? Why would you even consider like, oh, do you have a backup in case something happens to you? We don't think like that.
No, we don't. But I did after that. So that's when I really ramped it up. I did months and months of research to try to find somebody that might be able to help him. I mean, I researched every corner of the urology world you can think of. I was looking at experimental procedures, at clinical trials. I was ready to do anything and go anywhere. He was being seen by a local doctor for a short period of time, but that doctor said, "This is way too complicated for me. I will monitor him and give you any report you want, but I can't fix your son. I can't do that." So after months of research, I narrowed it down, and Joe and I decided it was between the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota or Boston Children's Hospital. And we chose Boston pretty much out of sheer convenience, because it didn't appear that one was necessarily better than the other for what we needed. They were both ranked top hospitals for urology. But obviously, being from New Jersey, it only made sense to go someplace that we could drive to. So in January of 2011, we had our first appointment there. We met with the head of urology, and he was just a very seasoned doctor that had experience with a lot of very complicated cases, and they were doing a lot of experimental things. So I thought, okay, maybe this is it, right? So it was determined that they wanted him to start self catheterization to try and alleviate some of the pressure from his bladder. Try telling that to your 11-year-old, that this is going to be their new life, that they were going to self catheterize every 3 hours during the day. And then at night, he would have a bag. And that's what he did. The following month, we went back up to the
So wait a minute,
to,
wait
yep,
a minute. So
yep,
he is in sixth grade now, right?
correct.
And so he would have to go to the bathroom during school and do it.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
So the nurse at at our school was just amazing. He actually was able to use the teacher's bathroom, which was wonderful. So there was never any chance of another child walking in. And up until now, I'm sure none of his friends knew that any of this ever happened. He's okay with it now. He's okay with me talking about this because there's a lot of kids that do this. I have to say, at the time, I was Googling like crazy. I wanted another parent to connect to. But
Mhm.
because of HIPAA laws, there's nothing. There is
Mhm.
literally nothing out there for parents going through this. Like, here's a for instance, your child has to catheterize, has a bag, okay, in your home. You're in a hospital, you can hang that on the end. Where do you hang this bag? Joe rigged a very sturdy hanger in between the box spring and the mattress, and
Oh,
that's what we hung it off of. Yeah. So Chris has this kidney disease, but in addition to that, he also had something where he was putting out an exorbitant amount of fluid, exorbitant amount of pee. He is just peeing constantly. And because of that, Joe and I would take turns in the middle of the night to go and empty the catheter bag so it didn't overflow and back up. So I'm like, okay, you're on tonight, buddy. And it was his turn. And the next night I'd go in, empty it in the middle of the night with a flashlight. And we did that for a very, very, very long time. But the one thing Boston Children's Hospital did that nobody else did with us, they introduced Chris to something called a Coude catheter. And that particular catheter helped him catheterize and navigate past that scar tissue that had formed in the base of his bladder. So that was really helpful.
I have a question for you. So fast
Sure.
forward, he's not going to last forever. Can you get us to where he's
Yep.
headed?
Yep, absolutely. So we went through that from 2011 until 2013. And at 2013, that's when they said that his kidney had had enough and it was time for a kidney transplant. In the summer of 2013, the five of us were tested, and it came back that all 5 of us were a match.
Oh, oh, that's
Yes,
fabulous.
it was fabulous.
Wait,
Yes.
five, there's your daughter, your husband, and you. Wait, how's five?
Nope. Juliana and Chris are
Oh,
not.
Juliana can't test because she's not biologically
Well, she
related.
could, but
Right, she
yes.
could, but it's less
So it
likely.
was, yes, it was myself, it was Joe, my husband, my sister Cindy, a dear friend from church, Janet,
Oh,
and Chris's baseball coach,
oh,
Neil.
that's fabulous.
Yes, and they were all we were all a match. However, the day that the call came in, I called Joe and I said, guess what? All 5 of us are a match, and can you believe this? And I said, you and I have to get home tonight and talk about which one of us is going to donate. Suzanne, I'm not joking. I don't think he heard me say anyone other than him
Hmm.
was an eligible donor, because he was like, no, 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 no. I'm it. That's it. All of you, you could do the other stuff. I'm it. And he really had been taking very good care of himself for a long time to prepare for this.
Mm.
So that was in August. It was a very rough fall. Chris was deteriorating right before our eyes. At the same time, we lost Joe's mom. Joe had lost a coworker. We had Christmas to celebrate. And on January 1st, Joe, myself, Juliana, and Christopher were in my minivan, packed to the roof on New Year's Day, moving to Boston for an undetermined amount of time to start this kidney transplant journey. So we got
And Chris is 13, right?
yes, he is 13. Yes. On January 2nd, they put him in for surgery to put him for a hemodialysis catheter, because they were going to start dialysis on him. They need you to be as healthy as you possibly can be to prepare for the kidney transplant. So that was on January 2nd. On January 10th, they did something that they don't normally do in kidney transplant patients, but with him, it was necessary. They removed both of his kidneys. When they started the surgery that day, they thought it would be laparoscopic, but because of all those years of reflux, they were so huge that it was necessary for them to open him completely. So he was open from his rib cage down to his belly button so they could remove these 2 massive kidneys. We went through dialysis through the month of January. We celebrated his birthday on January 29th, and on January 30th, he received Joe's left kidney. He had the kidney transplant. Did well. Everybody was fine. It was a very long day. I had family members come up, as well as Juliana, to sit by my side. Could not have gotten through that without them, because here we were. Joe was always with me through any surgery that we had been through. And I felt really, really alone that day. He was not there, because I had him in one hospital and Chris at the other. Chris was in the Children's Hospital, which is connected by a bridge to Brigham and
Okay.
Women's Hospital. So Joe was in the adult and Chris was in the children's. So yeah, he did well. Joe was in the hospital, I think, 4 days, and Chris was in just a little over a week. And
Oh,
then he
wow.
came home. Chris and I remained there for a couple months for monitoring, because after a transplant, you need a lot of follow ups. Your body is adjusting to this new body part. You got to make sure that your medications are in check. So it was, yeah, it was quite an interesting time.
Oh my goodness. And
Yep.
so, what is life like now?
Well, of course, kidney transplant is maintenance. It's a lot of work. The number one question Chris always gets is, will he need medication for the rest of his life? And the answer is yes. He takes anti-rejection meds every single day. They are timed and they are crucial, because missing one single dose can put him at risk for losing that kidney. You really need to be super careful. One thing about a kidney transplant and the process that people need to know is that a kidney transplant is a treatment, not a cure. So anyone that has had a kidney transplant will require another kidney at some point in time. It's unknown. Statistically, a kidney will last like 20 to 25 years. That's from a living donor. A deceased donor, that kidney will typically last around 15 to 20 years. And again, that's, the ballpark. You don't know. I've heard of people with kidneys for 35 years. And of course, that's our hope. But I guess the most important thing that Chris had to learn after transplant were his medications, what they were, why he takes them, the dosages, the common side effects, all that. You've got to learn that. And they drill that into your head because it's important. These things are keeping you alive. So
Mm.
the first year was a lot of monitoring. He had a couple of hiccups along the way, but he worked them out and he grew a lot. His limitations, because I know a lot of people have questions, are there things he can't do, or he can't take anti-inflammatory drugs like Advil or Motrin or anything like that.
Those are hard
They
on the
don't want
kidney, right? Those are
exactly,
hard on the kidney.
exactly,
Yeah.
yes. They don't like him swimming in lakes, which is interesting because of all the bacteria.
Makes total sense to me because when
Yes,
Christopher had a portocatheter, he could go in pools but not lakes because there's just
yes,
too much bacteria.
exactly, exactly. Can't eat sushi, can't have raw meat, things like that. No grapefruit because it interacts with, and you just have to be careful around sick people. It's like, because maybe he's standing next to someone that has a cold and you and I would just catch that cold. It's much worse for him. He's had many hospital stays since the transplant, but they're always on top of it. And one of the things that did happen after it was the day he went to college. We sent him off to college. And the next day he called us and said, Mom, I got to come home. And I was like, buddy, you've only been there for 24 hours. Like, what are you doing? And he said, no, I have 103 fever. And it turned out he had eaten bad lobster the week before, had an upset stomach the whole time, didn't tell us, and ended up in the hospital with 2 weeks with E. coli. So these are just sort of the kind of things that can happen. You can only imagine during COVID time, it was terrifying. I mean, I
Right.
basically locked him in our basement and I was like, you play Xbox every day. I don't care. Do not come up here. After the E. coli incident, he ended up commuting. He was not staying at college. He ended up going to Ramapo and commuted, and it turned out to be the perfect solution for him. But yeah, he graduated from college. He's doing well. He recently moved into Hoboken. He has a job in New York City, like a big boy job at a wealth management company, and he's doing well. I mean, look, there's always these things that come up. It's always a worry, but he is fully responsible and capable of handling his own medical world.
Which is huge, which is
It
huge.
is. It is. He that sort of happened. That was sort of baptism by fire. I got very sick with COVID in 2020, and Chris needed to. I mean, I think it started with a refill of a medication. And I was like, buddy, I can't get up. You have to handle this. I will walk you through it, but you have to handle this. And little by little, I watched him just sort of take over his care, and he's done it. He's done a great job at it. So, yeah.
So let me ask this. How are you?
Yeah, that's I am figuring it out. It was really hard for me. Everybody else seemed to be able to just bask in this new healthy kid and move on. And I had a really hard time just boxing it up, putting it on a shelf and walking away. I just did. I felt like I got gypped out of a little bit of time with my kids. I mean, and I didn't, Suzanne. I didn't. I was there for everything.
No, say how you feel. So often this happens when people speak to me. I think sometimes they compare their situation to my situation, and they feel bad that they're even speaking their truth. And I don't want you to
Yeah,
feel bad. I want you to speak freely.
I will. I will. So I feel like I got gypped because there was so much sickness with him, and I felt gypped for Juliana. I mean, so many vacations we would go on and we would end up in hospitals, and that was not our plan, and that happened a lot, like a real lot.
Mm.
So I think all of a sudden, I felt like I was gaining a little bit of traction after transplant. I mean, let's face it, Chris was 14. It was the day after his 13th birthday that his 14th birthday that received the transplant. We got into somewhat of a groove, and now all of a sudden I'm getting Juliana ready for college, and like, whoop, there she goes.
Oh,
And
yeah.
out she goes. And I'm like,
And
whoa,
you
whoa, whoa,
didn't
whoa,
get that
whoa.
kid time or
Wait a
that
minute.
even,
So it
yeah.
just went too fast. It just went too fast. So again, just as I was gearing up, had some traction, they were ready to leave. So look, for years, I took everyone else's physical and psychological health under my wing. And somewhere along the line, I forgot about me.
Mm.
And when the dust settled, for me, there was anger, there was sadness, there was worry, there was a level of guilt, guilt for not spending as much time with Juliana, or maybe if had I taken to a different doctor earlier, all those things. Um, but
There's
and
always mom guilt. There's always mom guilt.
yes, yes. I mean, we're our children's protectors, and I felt like I failed to provide that for my kid. Like, oh my God, how did I don't know.
But you,
The
but you
logical
know, like
side of me is
intellectually, I mean, he was born,
yes,
right? But then
yes, of
even,
course.
but even as I say that, you still, or at least I, because Christopher is a preemie, you still think, oh, wait a minute, what did I eat? What did I
Yes,
do? Did I live too close to that? The gas station was a half quarter of a mile from my house. And benzene and gasoline is a contributor to leukemia.
yes.
You always blame yourself. But you know what I realized is that when we blame ourselves, like if we have the power to cause it, then we have the power to fix it.
Mm, yes, yes.
And we have neither.
I know. That's so true. That is so true. But, I had those thoughts, of guilt during a time that I know I was depressed. So, of course, it's even
Mm.
bigger, right? When you're depressed, your thoughts are so dark, and you gotta blame someone, right? So in my case, I blamed myself. I did get the professional mental help that I needed, and it was years of therapy and sifting through the wreckage, if you will. But I'm able to be happy again, and take a step back. And Chris handles his stuff. And the old me was like, well, did you call about your medicine? Did you call your doctor? When's your appointment? What time you going? And now I'm like, okay, your appointment's Friday. Oh, good. Let me know. Do you need me to go with you? I'm much more relaxed about the whole thing. I'm still
Yeah.
worried.
So Sheri, how did you had so much tough stuff and it was one hard thing after another. How did you find that place of maybe ease isn't the right word, but what I learned in grief is that kids can't go from hard time to hard time to hard time. We do that and we don't take a rest, but kids have to have that, they have that time for play and then sadness and then play.
Mhm.
But that's grief. You had needed to cope constantly. So what did you do? Like, what did you do to stay strong?
I followed their lead, um, and I tried to play when they played. One of the things that we did, it was funny. I know one of the things you had asked me was where I found joy, right?
Yes.
Our family time, like where did we find our joy? And there was a lot of things, of course, it was family game nights and all kinds of fun stuff. But there's one particular thing when my kids entered elementary school, I learned that they were able to go out for lunch. So I took them out, and 3 weeks in a row, we would go to the local pizza place with all the other moms and all the other kids. And I'd sit with the moms and chit chat, and they would sit with their friends. And it was like 3 weeks later, and I thought, this isn't working. This isn't why I'm taking them out. And on the fourth week, it was a beautiful day in the fall. And I picked them up with our wagon, and I had a blanket and I had a ball with us. And they were like, okay, mom, we're going to the pizza place. And I said, we're not. We're going to the park. Just us, just the three of us. And they lit up. I thought I was going to get a little feedback from them, but I didn't. They were really excited about it. So from that point on, every Tuesday, we had Tuesdays in the park with mom. And I continued that until Juliana went on to middle school. And every week I'd show up and we'd have a ball or a deck of cards, and it was just this tiny little park. There were no swings, there were no slides. It was just grass, a couple of benches, and for the most part, just us. So if
Oh,
it rained
great.
or if it was cold or anything like that, I would take that same blanket, throw it out in the middle of our living room, and we would have that same routine because I didn't want to break that routine. I loved our Tuesdays together. And
How
come to find
fabulous.
out, I'm sorry.
How fabulous.
Yes, it really was. But my favorite part is that they never asked to go back to that pizza place on a Tuesday. So some things you just do right as a mom, right?
Yeah. And they just loved being with you. They were probably like, yes, we get mom time.
Yeah, yeah. And Suzanne, I can't even tell you that we had deep conversation. I mean, we talked about everything and nothing. And those were the conversations that mattered.
Those are the
You know, when
best.
you fast forward that your life and you look back, those were the things that mattered.
Yes, 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 yes. I have like a journal entry somewhere where um we were just talking about our favorite parts of the day.
Mhm.
And it was after Christopher came home, I guess, after his relapse. And I remember saying, like, what was your favorite part of the day? And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, shoot, we were at clinic. Christopher and I were at clinic all day getting chemo. Like, why did I ask this question? But kids
Yeah,
aren't
yeah.
like that.
What good can come of that, right?
Yeah. And he didn't go there. He saw it as mom asked my favorite part of the day. And he talked about a video game he beat.
Yeah,
And he didn't go into my place.
right, right.
We only go into that place.
Exactly, exactly. And I guess that's when you have to take a step back, broaden the lens, and say, huh, I guess I did it right.
Yeah. Yes. And like, so you did it every Tuesday,
Hmm.
regardless of what was happening in your life, if they were in school and if they were home, right? If you
Yes,
were home.
yes, yes, we did. And there were days that Christopher was homesick, but I would go pick up Juliana, and we would just have our lunch in the living room.
How fabulous.
And we just kept going. We just kept going, and I learned that from them. You just pull up your bootstraps and you just keep going. We don't have time for this. We don't have, you know.
And did you find that like Chris he didn't want to be the sick kid. He didn't want that focus,
Oh
right?
my gosh,
I mean,
never.
I'm assuming because that's my experience with my Christopher, but they don't.
Yes.
Let me ask you this. Well, I'll say first, and then you can. My Christopher didn't even see himself as sick,
No, never. I
right?
understand that. No. Nope. No, he didn't. As a matter of fact, a couple weeks ago, we were celebrating Chris's 24th birthday at the house, and we had his best friends with us. And his friend James said, we talked about the fact that the following day was going to be the 10-year anniversary of the transplant. And James said, he and Chris have been friends since grammar school. And James said, oh, I remember the day that Chris told me he was getting a transplant. That was an interesting conversation. And I said, what are you talking about? They were on Xbox, and their other friend Nick was just getting off. He had to go have dinner with his family. And he said, oh, by the way, Chris, good luck with your procedure, right?
That these kids know
And
what procedure, like that they
I
know
know,
the word.
I know. So Nick hangs up, right? He disconnects from the game, and James goes, what procedure? What's going on? He said, oh, I'm getting a kidney tomorrow. Just so matter of fact, like, what? I'm getting
Yes.
a kidney tomorrow. Yeah.
And
So,
I love that they kept it matter of fact
yes,
because it was just one thing in their life, right? It wasn't everything. It was just one thing.
exactly. Exactly.
And
So,
you're right. We took our cues from our kids.
yes, absolutely. 100%. Yep. Like,
And
how could I give up when they didn't?
right,
Right?
right.
There's no throwing in the towel. We have things to do the next day.
And how could you complain
Nope.
when they didn't?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
There was one thing my Christopher said to me. I want to say he was probably around 15 or 16. And I was sort of really in a dark place as far as what we had been through. And I was still kind of coming out of it. And he said to me, Mom, stop looking in the rearview mirror. Yep. I think he was
Oh my
15 when he said
goodness.
that. And I went, oh, I guess I've been put in my place, haven't I? Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty profound words from a kid, right?
Really
Yeah.
profound.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when Christopher was first diagnosed with leukemia when he was 3, the the nurse said to us, "Your kids are going to get you through this because their primary purpose is play."
Yes.
And that's what they do as kids. And
Yes.
so, like, people were like, "How did you get through this?" I'm like, "The kids." Like, oh, they're like, "Did you teach the kids?" I'm like,
No,
no, they taught me."
that's right. That is right. Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So I
We,
guess you know what, Suzanne, think back. We're very blessed to be surrounded by so much positivity, aren't we?
yes. Yes. And we're very blessed that we are naturally positive,
Yes. Yes. I will agree with that.
because that doesn't mean it's not hard.
Yes.
That doesn't mean you didn't have to peel us off the floor at times.
Yep. That's right.
But when you lean towards the positive, maybe you move. I don't want to say you move through faster, because I was stuck for a long time.
I'm
But
sure.
I think you just, I don't know, you can see the light. You can see
Yeah.
the light in the dark.
Yes. Yes.
And
Absolutely.
even if it's a tiny flicker, there's still a flicker of light. Would you
That's
agree?
right. That's right. Yes. Oh, absolutely.
So you always ate dinner together, right?
We did. Yes, we did. That was really important to us. It was important to me, but it was important to all of us. It was sort of that come together at the end of the day, talk about our day. And I often say it's our dinner table was a place where we problems were solved, dreams were made, and laughter was constant.
Oh,
That was our dinner table. That's kind of that's a summation of it, because the conversation never stopped. And at one point, Christopher, he was not a great eater. He had really hard time eating like full meals, and it would just take him forever. Chris, please, one more bite, one more bite. So Joe became the household dishwasher while I sat and had conversation and played games and the state game and alphabet game and all this. And I mean, we sometimes it would be like an hour and a half. And Juliana was just always so patient, and she would sit for as long as she possibly could. And finally, I'd kind of give her the okay, like, okay, you could be excused, like you've done
oh.
this long enough. But our dinner times are really drawn out because of that, because of his eating issues.
That's interesting, because my Christopher ate really slow too. And he loved to talk. So a lot of the times it was Christopher and I at the table,
Yep.
chatting after Rich and Ryan left. And it was okay, because we had great conversations then too.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. We had them nightly, every night.
And that's great that Joe was home for you, with the three of you as well.
He was. He was. I mean, our dinner was a little bit later than I would have liked it, but it was okay as long as Joe was there, and he was. And Joe made a lot of sacrifices. I mean, I'm sure he could have furthered his career, but it was more important for him to be home. To him, he wanted to
That's
be home.
huge.
So, yep. Yeah.
And
So
that he had
he
the flexibility to do it.
yes, exactly. Yeah, he did.
Wow.
So,
Wow. And then there was one more thing you told me. Dinners,
sorry.
pizza. Don't worry about your dog. It's fine. And
Oh my gosh, game nights. We still do game nights. We're huge huge gamers. I mean, everything, you name it. It started out obviously as like Candyland, and we've graduated to the craziest games, these intellectual ones that I am like, okay, guys, I'll play, but I know I'm losing.
what games?
We play like Farkle and trivia and like any kind of trivia. Christopher is like the biggest trivia hound. He follows them now that he lives in Hoboken. He goes to all the trivia nights places.
That's
Um, oh
amazing.
yeah, he gobbles it up. We often say like, "What is in that brain of yours?" You have to remember, he had so much downtime at the time in his life when his brain was a sponge, and he would love to watch the History Channel and National Geographic. And I mean, he will rattle off stuff about World War One and World War II. I'm like, what? How do you know this stuff?
That is fabulous.
Yeah, yeah. I do not hang out with him when he's watching Jeopardy. Nope, I don't do that. So
That is so cool.
yeah.
Wow. So amongst the hard, you had a lot of light, and you
We
had
had a
a lot of
lot of
joy.
light, and you know what, Suzanne? We had a lot of normalcy. We did. We were just a regular family, and unless you really knew us, you didn't know what was going on behind the scenes.
I didn't know
And
what was going on behind the scenes, and I know you.
yep, yep. And I think Christopher set that. If he felt well enough to go and play baseball, he's going to go play baseball. And if
Yes.
that meant, and believe me, it wasn't easy for him to go and play that game. We had to catheterize beforehand and make sure we were home in 3 hours to catheterize after. And it was a very timed thing. And I mean, there were days he played through, and by the end, I'm like, "Are you okay?" And he was playing out there with 102 fever, unbeknownst to me. And he didn't say anything because he wanted to get that game in. And that didn't happen once or twice.
Our Christophers are so similar. Christopher skied with a fever, and I knew something was off because
Because
moms,
we're moms and we
because
know.
we're moms. Yeah, and I said to him, like, buddy, why didn't you tell me you were sick? And he's like, because you would have made me go home. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh.
Yep.
But it's
And he was
amazing
right.
how tough they are, right? Because they rise to the occasion. They do things. Kids who have those tougher rides and their siblings are super tough too.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. I was thinking about it the other day and I was like, you know what? And I was reading something and there was a thing that came up and it said, so and so was the binding to the quilt of their family. And I went, oh, that's Juliana. That's Juliana. She's the binding to the quilt
Wow.
of our family. So, how do people find me? Well, right now I am wrapping up a memoir. I am in the final stages of editing. This has been extremely helpful, cathartic for me. So, hopefully, this should be out in the next couple of months. The name of the book is, I did not mention this. My Christopher is a redhead, a vibrant redhead. And when we would walk for the various organizations to support kidney disease, our team name was Rootin' for Red.
Mm,
So the name of my book is Rootin' for Red, My Son's Detour to Healthy.
mm.
And I will give you all the information and people can find me there and hopefully check out the book in the next couple of months.
Are you on Instagram or do you have a website or anything like that?
Yep, Instagram and Facebook. Yes, absolutely. I will put that up there.
Okay, so you'll give your links and everything. Do you have a website yet or no?
I do not. We are working on that.
Okay. Okay. So your Instagram and your Facebook so people can find you. And then
Yep.
when your book
They could
comes
just go to
out.
Rootin' for Red. They can go to Rootin' for Red, but I will give that to you.
Okay.
All
Perfect.
right.
Sherry, thank you so much for sharing your very hard story. And thank you I know this is going to really help someone. So thank you for
I
coming on
hope
and
so.
sharing.
I hope so. I mean, you have given so many people a platform to do that, so thank you. But yeah, people can contact me through whichever social media they prefer. Obviously, an open book. So, any questions about I'm not a doctor, but we lived through it. So, if
Mm.
anybody has any questions about anything like that, I am certainly happy to speak with them.
Thank you so much, Sherry.
All right, Suzanne. Thank
Okay,
you.
take care. Takeaways. One, a kidney transplant is a treatment, not a cure. Two, with a kidney transplant, you'll be on medication the rest of your life. Three, take your cue from your kids. They'll guide you and teach you. They'll set the tone if you let them. Four, trust your mom instinct. It's so powerful. Too often, as medical moms, we think doctors know best because they're doctors, but we know our kids. Five, make yourself a priority. Take time for you and seek emotional and mental support if you need it. Six, sometimes you just got to pull up your bootstraps and keep going. Seven, stop looking in the rearview mirror. Create an uplifting routine like dinners with family or fun game nights that support you and place you in the beautiful present moment. Okay, my healing tip for you comes from Jin Shin Jitsu. Jin Shin Jitsu is an ancient Japanese healing modality in which we use placement of our hands on specific areas of our body and our breath to balance mind, body, and spirit and release discomfort. So reach for one of your index fingers, either one, hold it gently like you'd hold a child's hands, and hold it and focus on your breath. Instead of focusing on the inhale and the exhale. Take an exhale and then an inhale. And do that for 36 breaths. Starting with the exhale, we make room for the inhale. We help to let go of stuff before we receive. The index finger helps balance bladder and kidney energy. And the emotion related to bladder and kidney energy is fear. So holding that index finger will help calm fear. You can start with 36 breaths, or you can hold longer. Questions, please DM me on Instagram. So thank you again for spending this time with us at Finding Joy in the Hard. If something resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Please DM me on Instagram and share your learnings, your ahas, questions, or even suggestions. I'm open to any of your insights. I welcome them. There's so much strength in this episode, so please share it with a friend or five. And if you feel inspired, please leave me a review on Spotify, on YouTube, on Apple, wherever you're listening. It makes a difference. It helps get this podcast out to those who really need it. So until next time, have a beautiful day.